Today we're looking at the best TikTok gaming setups. This is Smitty, 15 years old from Texas. He mainly uses this setup for content creation and streaming. His old setup had a Chromebook and used a phone and PS4 for gaming. The inspiration to build this setup was to grow and invest in my brand. He started building this setup around 5 months ago. It's taken him around 5 months to build it all. He built the setup from content and his Epic Games creator code. Yo, chat, how many of you guys actually use a creator code of a creator? Because that's crazy. I didn't know someone could afford an entire setup from Epic Games like themselves. I didn't know they made that much money, but this is a huge setup. This is dope. I'm loving the ultra wide to match all of this. I love all the cameras. I think you did a really good job with like placement for everything. Also, I love the theme. You know, you got the PS4 on one side, the PC on the other. That's built really nice. I'd probably say this is like a solid 9 in my opinion. I think he did a really good job. I mean, just looking at the photos, the lighting, the personality in every spot. I feel like in every corner of the room there's something, you know, and I feel like that's a good thing, and it's not like overly cluttered. I think this turned out awesome. The next setup is by Amari Tapal. He's a 13-year-old from New York City. He mainly uses a setup for gaming and homework. He started building this setup in March of 2023. It's taken him around 5 years to make this setup possible. He's inspired to build this setup as he wanted a good setup to use. He built the setup on his own with a little bit help from his dad. He built the setup using his money from working with his dads. I like the prove them wrong sticker as well. So just looking at the whole room, I mean, it looks like kind of a basement setup because in basements you have like a little tiny window you put curtains on. That's the only thing that I don't like in this setup, to be honest. It just looks so weird, but it's just because of a New York like house type of thing. Like a lot of it's a common thing. Overall, the aesthetic of the setup is really clean. Monitor layout's awesome. Mouse pad's great. Stuck to the white and black theme very well with a hint of wood. The wood isn't too bright either, which kind of matches the black PC and the different personality things around his setup. You know, the paintings and stuff. I would have liked to see more on this right wall, like on the right of his setup. I would have liked to see more, you know, personality, shelves, things that make him kind of things. Overall, I'd probably rate this a solid, I'm gonna go with like a solid 8 out of 10. The direction you're going in right now is good. I just think you need to add a few more things like on the right side of the room, and I think it'll balance itself out. Really good setup for 13, man. So let's look on to the next one by Joachim, 13 years old from Norway. Mainly uses this setup for gaming. The old setup was a laptop setup and with an IKEA desk and a single monitor, and he started building this setup around 2 years ago. It took them till December 2022 to build it all, and I built the setup with some help from her brother and the PC. I built the setup by reselling PCs and as well some help from my mom. So looking at the whole setup, I mean, just looking at it here, I mean, this is beautiful. Just really solid, you know, plants in the middle to hide the gap. I've never really seen anybody do that, so that's awesome. Usually it's like a camera or something. Also, I love the light bar and what kind of light it brings onto the keyboard and mouse, because it just adds such an ambient, like clean aesthetic to it, which I really like. But yeah, looking at the cable management too, not a single cable really in sight besides one power cable. Really clean. Awesome setup for 13. I mean, this is a beautiful setup. People are saying out of 10, 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10. I mean, this is a beautiful setup regardless. I mean, this is really nice. Yeah, overall beautiful setup. Thank you for submitting. Whoa, okay, Esteban, I think I said your name right, Esteban. He's an 18-year-old from Montreal, Quebec. He mainly uses the setup for gaming, school, and photo editing. He's inspired to build this setup by GutzyAiden tech source and TikTok. He started building his setup in summer of 2022. It took him around 2 months to put it all together. He built the setup using his money from his working at IKEA and side hustle. I mean, just looking at this entire room, beautiful setup. Like, just everything is balanced. It looks nice. It has a ton of personality. I mean, this is a beautiful setup, chat. I mean, look at the shelves on the left side. Everything is just like immaculate, you know, like showing 2K. He likes 2K. There's like different pop figurines of things he likes. The whole shelf matches in the setup, the black here and the black there, and then the wall has like grass on it with like a really clean like little neon sign. Cable management obviously isn't the most insane cable management, right? But it's cable managed enough to like not see a cable, and it just has such a unique vibe to it. I think this is a 10 in my opinion. Beautiful coloring, man, such a beautiful setup. Thank you for submitting. A skilled, I hope I said your name right. He's a 12-year-old from Norway. He mainly uses a setup for music production and gaming. His old setup had an old gaming laptop that he didn't have any RGB. He started building a setup in December 2021. It took him around 1 year to put it all together. He was inspired to build this setup by GutzyAiden and a tech source. He built it by using money from Christmas and birthdays. He built it mostly by himself and from his dad. Looking at this setup, the one thing I noticed was the cable management. This thing needs absolute cable management and reorganization. I see the potential for sure of this setup. I just don't like the cable management. In my opinion, I think that he could use a lot more of it. I mean, from this angle, it looks decent underneath, but then on the right side, you have all these cables here. accurate. I think that the cable management needs to be reorganized. I think a lot of chat is saying that as well. It's not bad, but it does need a lot of work. So in my opinion, put the PC on the floor, reorganize all the cables, maybe get a bigger raceway. Personally, I would rate this a 5 out of 10. I think he maybe needs to get a bigger desk, more cable management, putting the PC on the floor, maybe adding a way to implement his music stuff without making it too harsh on the setup itself. But yeah, overall, I would say it's like a 5 in my opinion. But thank you for submitting. Next up is Cameron. He's a 16-year-old out of Houston. I mainly use this setup for streaming and content creation. He started building a setup in 2017. He finished building this version around 3 weeks ago. He's inspired to build this minimal setup while maintaining a personality. He was able to afford a setup through content creation on TikTok. He built the setup mostly on his own while implementing inspiration from TikTok. See, I like this setup a lot. I think it's so minimal. I would have liked to see more personality on the walls. I know Etch as a person, so I know he's a very minimal person. This minimal setup works great for him. I also like where he put his camera, because like if he wants to do top-down shots, he has top-down shots. If he wants to put it on himself, he can. So it's kind of a nice area to put his camera up here. And if he wants to stream with it, he could just move it over and then he's got a stream camera. So I definitely think that that's like a really solid way of putting your camera. But yeah, overall, really solid setup, man. Overall, I think the PC's built well. I think the desk is built well. It's built for what you need it for, and it's very clean. So I would have liked to see a little bit more personality. Like I said, really solid setup, chat. What would we rate this out of 10? 8 out of 10 because there's too much stuff on the right which makes it non-symmetrical. It's not that it's not symmetrical. It's more that it just doesn't have personality on the wall. And I don't think he's going for symmetry here. I think he's going for minimalism, which isn't a humongous deal. And I like that the camera's there too. But overall, really solid setup. Thank you for submitting, Etch. Moving on to Lim Feng, the 14-year-old out of Hong Kong. I built this setup, and as well, he wanted to have space that he could already enjoy. His main game is CSGO. He started building his setup in September of 2020. It took him around 3 months to put it all together, and he built the setup by saving up with his own money. So looking at this setup, I mean, just how beautiful the single monitor setup is amazing. I love this side of the setup. I love that there's like one setup that's really clean on the left side, and then there's another setup that's clean on the right side. Has 2 monitors. One wanted an ultra wide, one wanted a double monitor. I also love that there's like a speaker so they can both like listen to music while they're playing. All of this is beautiful harmony. I think that the setup works great. I think that might be a bunk bed above them or something, but this is such a beautiful setup with the lighting, the clean looks, the cable management, the PCs, like everything fits together. And I think you did a wonderful job. And in my opinion, I'd rate this like a 9.5 out of 10. The 0.5 being gone because there's just not any personality to the setup. And yes, personality matters and probably would have been a whole point, but chat really likes the setup, and I think the cable management's decent enough. I mean, obviously I would have liked to see it a little bit more like close to the desk, but you can't even see it on that side, so it's not a humongous deal. But I really like this setup, and I think you did a wonderful job too. Moving on to the next setup, this is Jason's setup. He's a 17-year-old from the United States. As mainly uses a setup for streaming, gaming, and schoolwork. I recently put the setup together. Okay, he's been upgrading and improving his setup since 2018. He's inspired to build a setup by GutzyAiden and TechSource. He worked for it and paid for his setup 100% on his own. But looking at this, I mean, it's really nice. I mean, I think the whole thing with this is that the PC's on the left side and everything's just squished into the right side. I think he should put the PC maybe on its own thing on the right side, center the monitors with the desk, and then move all the figurines like around and maybe get some shelves. I just think it's super cluttered and there's really not a lot of room for how many monitors he has. I mean, this is a beautiful setup. I think it's really clean. I would have liked to see just a little bit more of the setup, to be honest, but it's honestly really solid. I think you should definitely reorganize it. But next setup is by Javier. Javier is a 16-year-old from Minnesota. Mainly uses his gaming setup for school and gaming. He started building his setup a year ago, but recently upgraded it. It took around a month to put it all together the way he has it now. He was inspired to build it by TechSource. He paid for the setup and by saving it, as well as working at Party City. He also built it and put it all together 100% on his own. But looking at this setup, I mean, I love how the setup is laid out. This is like an example of someone who knows like how to organize a setup to where it doesn't feel cluttered. Also, I think it's also he got a house buff here because the house has this ledge where you don't even really have to put shelves on it and it stays off the desk. So he put like his personality stuff on this mini shelf. For the main setup, he knew that he didn't have enough room on the right side. So what he did is he put the PC on the floor and, you know, put something to where he could store it down there, and it doesn't take up a lot of room of the setup itself, which that's a really smart decision by him. Also, I think he did a really good job with the monitor layout. It doesn't seem too cluttered. It's really clean. Also, I think he added enough personality to where it's not overly over the top or anything like that. And I do love how like he did in the past have this PC here, but I think this is like an older picture. So I think the newest setup, the way he did it here, looks the best in my opinion. This is a really nice setup. 10 out of 10 in my opinion. I think I really love the personality. I think he did a great job. So thank you for submitting. The next setup is by Flavio. He's a 17-year-old from Switzerland. He mainly uses a setup for studying and gaming. He started building the setup in summer of 2020. It took him around 2.5 years to build it all to where it's at now. He was inspired to build it by tech source and GutzyAiden. He built the setup by saving up and working with his own money. So looking at this entire setup, I mean, it's a beautiful setup. There's just something weird to it about it to me. I don't think anybody from chat's gonna realize this, but the setup on the bottom half, before we get to the shelves, right? The bottom side is nice because it's got wood, black, and it keeps this wood and black theme, but then you have glass and silver, and this doesn't go well at all with the setup. In my opinion, I mean, yeah, the silver kind of matches these, but the glass just doesn't really match for me. The personality is there 100%. I just think the glass just seems a little off, but overall it's really solid. In my opinion, I think it's probably a solid, I'm gonna go with this one being a solid like 8 out of 10 probably. I think the setup is really solid personality wise. I think there's just like simple things that he could change. It's not a bad setup. It's really solid. The next setup is by Charlie. He's a 16-year-old from England. Mainly uses the setup for gaming and content creation. He started building a setup in October of 2022. It took him around 1 week to put it all together. His old setup was super bad, crammed, and now he's got it pretty much spread out. He was inspired to build his new setup by moving to a new house. He paid for his setup by saving up money and selling old PC parts. Looking at this entire setup, there's a lot to unpack. I mean, double PC setup. I'm assuming this is maybe like a friend or a girlfriend type of setup. Maybe I'm assuming a brother or a sister or something, because he said he was kind of younger, so I don't think there would be like a girlfriend like being here all the time. But looking at the entire setup, I mean, this is beautiful. I love the plants on the wall, and adding the double setup like this is beautiful. I think it's really nice that it matches. Looking at this PC is beautiful. I love how the GPU mount kind of diagonally shows the GPU. I think that's really unique, and I haven't seen that. Also like that he has the specs on this mini screen for us. It looks like a 3070 and Intel Core i7. I just like that he put this on here as well. It's really nice. And overall, I mean, double setup and it being somewhat organized is actually nice. I think he did a great job with this. I'd probably rate this like a solid, I'm gonna go with a solid 9. I really like that it's a dual setup. I really like that he did a great job with adding personality and also making it fit. Yeah, it's a solid 9 in my opinion. Thank you for submitting. Next one is Joel. He's a 14-year-old from Germany. He mainly uses a setup for gaming, streaming, and content. Started building a setup in April 2022. It took him around 3 to 4 days to put it all together. He was inspired to build it by tech source and GutzyAiden. He paid for the setup by saving Christmas and birthday money. So looking at this entire setup, I mean, I like that the desk is just super long. You know, it feels like it fits perfectly. I love the monitor layout. I think it's good as well. One single monitor, 2 monitors on both sides. PC fits well. The dog bed underneath. The lighting where these 3D art panels are kind of pushed off the wall, so it adds a little bit more lighting, I think is great. Also, the cloud ceiling is kind of nice. I think it's really cool. In my opinion, I would rate this like a solid, I rate this a solid 8 out of 10. It's really clean. It just lacks a little personality for me in the actual setup. I mean, in the room, it actually has a decent amount of personality, but I just would have liked to see more in the setup itself. It seems just like very plain. But yeah, maybe if he doesn't want to, that's up to him. But I think it's like a solid 7 or 8, somewhere in there. The next setup is by Lucas. He's a 13-year-old from Washington State. He mainly uses a setup for gaming, streaming, and schoolwork. His old setup had an Xbox and a TV. He started building a setup in mid-2021. It took him around 2 years to build it all. I was inspired to build his setup by TechSource and GutzyAiden. He paid for his setup by working on a farm and chores. Man, I love this color theme. I think he's doing a great job with his age, and also building this setup at your age is really nice. 3 monitor setup, PC. At your age, I had nothing, so you know, this is a beautiful setup. There are some things that I would maybe change. Is the sound bar. I would love to see like a tiny shelf above the main monitor for the sound bar, or below this is mounted, you know, because on the desk it seems like it just takes up a lot of room for no reason. Like if you want to, if that's like your only way of listening to sound, I would recommend maybe mounting it or something like that. If you can't mount it, then I would just leave it, but I don't know, it just seems like it's really out of place for me. And then the PC itself, I almost think like it's a solid PC, but I feel like your desk doesn't have enough room for it. So I would recommend maybe getting like an Alex drawer on the far right, or maybe just clearing out the bottom of your desk and just putting it underneath. In my opinion, I would probably rate this a solid 7. I'm gonna go with a 7. I mean, it could be like maybe a 6 in most people's opinion, but I think it'll probably be a solid 7. Yeah, solid 7 in my opinion. Looks really good. Moving on to the next setup here. The next setup is by Luca. He's a 15-year-old from New Zealand. He mainly uses this setup for gaming and streaming. His old setup had an Xbox One and a TV. He started building the setup in December 2022, and it took him around 2 to 3 days to put it all together. And he built this setup by working at McDonald's and doing newspapers. He built mostly everything by himself with some help from his dad. So looking at this setup, I mean, this is a beautiful setup. I just love how clean it is. I think it's everything is really nice. And then there's like a random just like old ass fan. It's like really, it's like kind of cursed in a way. It's a really nice setup, but then you just got this like random fan there. And then like the personality of the room, I feel like if you decorated the walls some more, like the painted wall looks good, but I think like if you painted the walls a little bit more, you know, you kind of went around with all that, it would look a lot better too. Yeah, chat, what would you rate this out of 10? I'm not sure where this is. Like from, yeah, see, like look, it kind of looks like an outhouse or something, or like an office. Overall, I would probably rate this like a solid 6, or no. I'd probably rate this like a solid 8 out of 10 with everything in it. I think he did a great job. Like, see, there's keys there on the far right or the far left too. So overall, this looks insane. I love the thermal take PC. I think this is probably the best thing in the setup, in my opinion, with the wall painted too. It looks really clean with this PC. This is dope though. Really clean. So let's go out and move on. Let's go on to the next setup, but thank you for submitting. Looks great. This is a Jan. He's a 15-year-old out of New Jersey. He mainly uses a setup for gaming and schoolwork and streaming. His old setup had an Xbox One with a TV as well and a keyboard and mouse. He started building his setup in the summer of 2022. It took him around 1 month to build it all, and he was inspired to build his setup by me and other tech creators. He built his setup by doing chores and saving birthday and Christmas monies. So looking at the setup, I love the monitor layout. I think he did a great job with the ultra wide and then a monitor up top. The side monitor looks good positioning there. Looking at the entire setup, I think that I would have liked to see a raceway underneath the monitor just to have it chill and make it a little bit more clean, but you did at least bring the cables together and everything. And then also the plants on the left side, I would have liked to see a little bit more plants on this side, maybe like a tall plant or something, just because you got like a lot of plants on this left side and like maybe like 1 or 2 on this side, just to balance it out a little bit more. Overall, I'd probably give this a solid, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I think this is a beautiful setup. I think he's got a lot of potential, and I think over time he'll be able to build more and more. And cable management though needs some work, buddy. Your cable management needs some work. This needs to be fixed ASAP. Maybe I need to lower my score a little bit. We didn't see the cable management, but overall, I think the cable management needs some work. Thank you for submitting. The next one is by Wyatt. He's a 16-year-old from Minnesota. He mainly uses a setup for gaming and content. He started building the setup in 2020, and it took him around 3 years to put it all together. So looking at this, I mean, just wow. This is a beautiful setup. I mean, just looking at the room itself, how much personality is in it. I mean, yes, there could be a little bit more things about the person, but how clean this is, it's awesome. I would have liked to see a bigger desk because you have 4 monitors, right? When you have 4 monitors, you have to have a bigger desk than this, especially if your monitor is going over the desk, right? The light strip through the panels, I think you did a great job routing that. I don't even know how you did that, but that's cool. And then also the PC on the shelf, I really like this idea. I've always thought about doing this, but putting a PC on a shelf, some of my PCs are mad heavy, so I thought it would be like such a hard thing to do because it just looks super heavy on its own. But yeah, looking at the setup, I definitely think like you need a bigger desk, maybe taking up like from here, from this door to this door, and make it like, you know, perfectly in between. It would just add so much symmetry to your setup, and you'd be able to have all those monitors in the same spot, and you could maybe center it just a tad more. But the room itself looks so nice. I think you did a great job with the whole room. Overall, really solid setup. Thank you so much for submitting, and I would rate this probably a solid 8.5 out of 10. I really like the aesthetics that you're building with the setup, and for how young you are, I mean, such a nice setup. Beautiful setup. If you made it to the end of this video, make sure to watch this video next, and thank you for watching. See you later. Bye-bye. Subscribe.